The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to this episode of Diversity Connections Faith Edition. Thank you for joining us. We're discussing the topic, obstacles to expressing and living your faith, according to our various faith perspectives. And we have a variety of faith groups represented around the table this evening, and we will be discussing a variety of questions, including, do you experience any kind of obstacle or opposition to your religious practice? How do you deal with opposition? For example, if there are laws that make it difficult for you to practice your faith, attacks, public statements stereotyping your faith, and how do you address intolerance? Now, we know in this community we have a variety of ways in which we have been addressing diversity, a more positive way of putting it. Obstacles is a more negative way of putting it. So, I will invite our discussants to go ahead and talk about these or other questions that may arise as we talk. So, August, would you open?
There are very few laws on the books that discriminate against atheists because it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of religious perspective or creed. Believe it or not, there are some state constitutions that prohibit people from holding public office unless they believe in a supreme being. Now, those are all unconstitutional, and they could all be challenged, and some of them have been challenged. But it's interesting that some state constitutions would have that. You can't hold higher office unless you believe in a supreme being. And I think even Texas adds a system of rewards, of divine rewards and punishments, which is in contradiction to the U.S. Constitution that says no religious test shall ever be required for public office. So we don't face very much obstacles in the law, but we do face subtle discrimination. Somebody might not get a job, or they might not get a promotion, or they might be the first one laid off because they're known to be an atheist. And that's against the law, too, to fire someone on the basis of their belief. But very hard to prove often that that's why you got laid off. So.
We don't usually think of atheism as a faith perspective. I mean, I would from my standpoint in a very broad sense.
Right. As far as how it's treated by the law,
right.
It would fall into that category,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how does some of the rest of you experience anything that you find to be obstacles or misunderstandings or opposition?
I can speak from Muslims' perspective. Not much obstacles that I think there is in terms of laws, because it allows you to practice your religion freely. But what we have seen, few incidents where it comes from people not knowing about Islam and some of the practices. For example, the 5 daily prayers. The way Muslims pray is a physical way. You prostrate, you bow down and you prostrate. And pray 5 times a day, although it takes like a couple of minutes to do that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to explain, depending on what kind of job you have, to the employers that, I really have to pray, take a 5 minutes break or something like that. So these are some of the incidents that we have seen in the newspaper and around that I'm aware of. Other than that, there are things like stereotypes and other things, I'm sure. A few other, we'll discuss it in the table, some of the other people. But this is one of the things that I comes to my mind about obstacles in practicing your faith in terms of like 5 daily prayers that sometimes get misunderstood.
For Native Americans, we have had a tremendous problem for a long time, not nowadays, but not too far past, of actually forbidding us to practice our religious rites. We were forbidden. There were laws passed to prevent us from for example, just one example, conducting the sun dance. It wasn't until just recent years that we were allowed to do that again. And this is one of the central rituals to our Native American spirituality. The sun dance is not just a purification, but it's a devotion to community. You do it not for self, but for the community's welfare. And it is, overall, it is a prayer to the Creator, to God. Other ceremonies, too, were forbidden. Back in the late 1880s, Wovoka, a Native American prophet of the Paiute Nation, spoke to all the people if they would perform a certain dance that became known as the ghost dance, wore a certain shirt, sang certain songs, prayed in a certain way, that the lifeblood of our people would come back, that our cultural ways would be brought back, the buffalo would return. The government and the settlers saw it as a threat, like we were dancing to go to war. And so it was prohibited. In fact, one of the saddest cases in our Native American history occurred in 1890 in Wounded Knee as a result of the ghost dance. Chief Bigfoot and his Miniconjou people were coming south to perform the ghost dance in desperation to bring things back the way they were. Not as a war, but to pray. And when they arrived at Wounded Knee, I think most everybody has some kind of understanding of what happened. The U.S. military massacred them, and they're all buried in one big mass grave there. But certainly these are obstacles, and now we have sun dances all over the place, and we still have our sweat lodges and vision quests and so on. But certainly those were obstacles.
Indeed. And Michelle?
Well, I think that the Jewish religion has, throughout history, been victimized by stereotyping, by practices that made it difficult to observe, or made it difficult for Jewish people to have equal access to large aspects of society. Peter Stuyvesant didn't want to let the Jews into New York, and I always laugh when I think about that, because it's probably the first or second largest concentration of Jewish people today. But America was not that welcoming to Jews in the beginning of its creation as a nation. We were here, we celebrated 2 or 3 years ago the 300th anniversary of Jewish presence in America. So we were here before the Declaration of America as a country. We still find today, though, inconsiderate remarks and young people who don't know what they're saying, or sometimes who do know what they're saying, who vilify Jewish children or who speak out of turn. On the other hand, we studied recently in our religious school the project of a group of students from Tennessee who got together to make a Holocaust memorial. This was a town that had no diversity whatsoever, and they decided that they wanted to understand both the downside of the lack of awareness that they could be victim of because they didn't understand diversity, and also to understand what other people had been through. And the children of that town, with the help of their parents and teachers, made a Holocaust memorial by collecting 6 million paper clips. And it's called the Paperclip Project. Of course, they then went ahead and gathered 11 million paper clips, because the events in Europe, in Nazi Europe, targeted not only Jews, but atheists, homosexuals, handicapped people, communists, political objectors, and so on. And so the children said, we need to understand what comes from lack of tolerance, and we don't understand what 6 million means. So they decided to find something that they could collect 6 million of. They collected 6 million paper clips. And they started their project in 1998 or 1999. It took them a long time to amass the paper clips. And while they were in the middle of bringing their monument into existence, the events of September 11th happened. And so one of the children said, if we didn't understand before what lack of tolerance can bring, we really understand it today. And so it's good to know that the Jewish experience can bring about enlightenment and understanding to other members of our community. But Jews have been victims of that kind of persecution for a very, very long time.
Now, you have mentioned a particular effort that was made to bring about understanding among a certain group of people. And that was a response of the larger community, of course. And I'm wondering if we can all think together about how your faith community has addressed these kinds of issues when confronted with them. What kinds of things have you done that can address those in a way to overcome those obstacles and the opposition and try to gain a better understanding?
Yeah. Well, as we all know, atheists have been on the margins of society from the beginning. And in 2002, the group I'm part of, Minnesota Atheists, made a conscious effort to try to mainstream atheism, which is not to say to make everyone in society into an atheist, but to say to have a seat at the table, to be part of the conversation. And what did we have to do to accomplish this? And the first thing we realized we had to do is to be friendly and not ridicule people, not put people down, just have this kind of a conversation like we're having now, and realize that there's nothing to fear from atheists. We're not trying to outlaw religion. That's one of the stereotypes about atheists. It's because of the Communist Association. The Communists did outlaw atheists. But certainly very few atheists that I know are communists, and even the ones that are in America aren't for outlawing religion. In fact, we appreciate free speech as much as anybody, being a minority group. So we've tried to address stereotypes by taking the bulls by the horn, trying to do what we can to reach out, to be friendly, to gather with other groups, to do positive things for society.
If I remember correctly, one of the first times I had the opportunity to meet you, you were with someone who had invited you to a class.
Right. I have a friend named Ron Johnson who's a teacher at Northwestern College in Arden Hills. And we've been friends for years, and he teaches as a professor at Northwestern College, a conservative Christian college. And he invites me in to give a presentation on atheism. But I do it in a way that's explanatory, to let the students know, well, this is what atheism is, this is how we view the world. You may have a different opinion. In fact, they're going to have a different opinion. But we can get along and we can have this discussion. And disagree philosophically and intellectually, but agree that we're all Americans, we can be friends and share the planet.
I'm interested in what some of the rest of you have done.
Well, in our case, fortunately, some of the elders, what you might call, conducted things out behind the barn. You know, even though it was against the law to do certain ceremonies, rituals, they carried on the teachings off in the woods somewhere where nobody could find us. We've learned the hard way to not talk too much about our rituals because they either get exploited by outsiders for money or they are outlawed. We are told not to do it anymore. And so our elders carried it on for us, passed it on, fortunately, and nowadays we have a resurgence of people coming back to the culture, back to the traditions, trying to pick up on it. We have powwow gatherings. I have a choice of a dozen every weekend to attend throughout the country, and my wife pick one, of course, and every weekend we're at our powwows. There are sun dances all over the place, vision quests and sweat lodges, and people are coming. Our native people are coming back. Even people who do not have native heritage are coming into it with us, to appreciating the spiritual significance of it all, which we can talk about later. But anyway, we that's how we exist today, because our elders back behind the doors carried it on and passed it on to us. So.
Until now you're able to bring it out in the open more.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So, Michelle or Rashad?
Sure. For Muslims, it's a matter of, as a Muslim, for me, to going back to the basics, very basics, to deal with situations like this when there are a lot of mistrust and misunderstandings and stereotypes. Going back to a verse in the Quran that has been often quoted by people, this is a very celebrated verse where God tells us that, O mankind, I have created you from a single man and a single woman, referring to Adam and Eve, and divided you into nations and tribes. So we know from that it is intentional. This diversity of opinion, your look, race, and color, and tribes, it's intended by God. And then he says, so I divided you into nations and tribes so that you get to know each other's. So that's the key for Muslims, to go back to the basics. So whenever someone doesn't know about something, that's when fear comes, or doubts or fears of unknown. So to deal with that, what we wanted to do is go back to the basic, as I said. So we do a lot of talks, presentations, discussions. We open up the mosque for open house. And then, as August was talking about, the professor in a Christian college invited him. Fortunately, there are professors around some of the colleges that invited me too, to give talk on, like, in a religion class, and that professor was a pastor. So he introduced me saying, well, if I talk about Islam as a pastor, it won't probably be appropriate. So now that we have a Muslim, so you hear it from a Muslim. So that is a very key, I think, for the whole community to understand. Because there are many people, Islam as a religion is not, it is spread all over the world. So, I mean, there are people from everywhere that are Muslims. So it's kind of hard to pick who speaks for Islam. So the key is, let the Muslims speak for Islam, and the mainstream Muslims speak for Islam, not someone who is not a Muslim speaking about Islam or writing books about Islam. May not be accurate. So,
Michelle?
We do the same thing. We open the doors of our house of worship, and we invite people in. Rashid and I speak so many times together that we thought at one time we should just switch places.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could do his basic Islam thing, and he can probably do my basic Judaism thing. But I think it's also a matter of combating on many fronts and being vigilant, trying to find a balance between understanding where people are coming from when they come at you with ignorance, but also saying, there's a line, and when you cross that line, then you've crossed a line. Saying hurtful things, using hurtful language and stereotypical or racist language, even if it comes from ignorance, is still not appropriate. So you have to find a balance between education and standing up.
Yeah. Now, I'm aware that you had a program at the synagogue a few weeks ago that I was privileged to be able to attend several sessions of. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Taste of Judaism.
Yes.
I remember which one you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had an outreach program, 3 sessions, just welcoming anyone who was interested in Judaism to come along and find out about the basic ideas of Reform Judaism.
Right.
So we spoke about ethics, we spoke about God, we spoke about our relationship with Israel, we spoke about modern social issues, and also our sacred texts and the Reform Judaism's understanding of our relationship to our text and relationship to history and biblical study.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Rashad, why don't you say a little bit more about your Saturday open house?
Here in Rochester Mosque, we last Saturdays of every month.
Last Saturdays of every month at 11 a.m. So we call it open house. We just, a couple of us just hang out there and sit there, and people walk in with questions. They want to see the mosque. So that's what we do. And I've been doing it for a couple of years now. We've been doing it, and this has been a great experience. Made a lot of amazing Christian friends, and met a lot of other people that might not be, some of the questions that I got probably shocked people, but it's all part of learning. I mean, that kind of encourages us to keep going, to open the doors. So, anyone is welcome to come in?
Anyone is welcome to come in last Saturday of every month at 11.
Okay. Would you say, Nakoma, that powwows are a way of getting acquainted with Native American religion? Because a lot of other things go on there, like some commercial types of activity and that sort of thing. But is that a good way to get acquainted with the Native American religion?
The public is always welcome to come to powwows, whether it's on the reservation or in the big city.
Yeah.
We've had them for years here in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
We encourage the public to come. We have a lot of fun there, but there's also some serious things that go on. And it's a good way to get an introduction to Native American spirituality, as well as just the festivity of it.
Yes.
We have a big sense of humor,
Yeah.
and it's a family affair. Grandparents, parents, children, everybody's welcome. You'll have a good time. But it is probably the best opportunity. I should point out that our Native American people, by the way, even if they carry on these traditional ways, may also be members of churches and synagogues and temples. And, you know, they are probably, I don't know, probably 90% of them also belong to some other faith.
Okay.
But they also carry on the traditional Native American ways.
Right.
And so you've got Catholic Native Americans, Protestant, Jewish, probably Islamic, all kinds of faiths, all out there on the same dance floor.
Right.
But they also practice the traditional
Yes.
Native American
Yes.
ways. And with Christianity or whatever faith, there is no great conflict.
Right.
You can do both.
Right. Okay. And August, I'd like to turn to you for a bit. What do you find to be the best way to get the word out on what atheists really want and believe, and what's the effective way to do that?
That's one of the purposes of Minnesota Atheists, is to educate the public, to let us define ourselves and not have the religious right to it. But we have a cable TV show, we have a radio show, both under the name of Atheist Talk, and you can find it on iTunes and get the podcasts of them.
Okay.
So we reach the public through the media that way. Coming up, we have a day of prayer that's going to occur at the state capitol in Minnesota. And while they're doing that outside, inside, in the rotunda, we're having a day of reason, because we figure everybody can be reasonable. Not everyone's going to want to pray, but everybody can subscribe to reason. So the theme for this year's Day of Reason is separation of church and state leads to equality for everyone.
Oh, okay.
So those are some of the and we have speakers every month and picnics during the summer, and they're open to the public.
I think all of us here, and us included, Native Americans, can associate with the stupid stereotypes that exist about all of us. And we have our share of them, and it usually starts with Hollywood movies. And people just have the stupidest stereotypes of what we do, and so wrong. I mean, it's just really insulting. And so I just thought I'd mention that.
Indeed, and I'm hoping that having this kind of conversation as we are right now, a civil, respectful, informative conversation, can model the kind of conversation that we can have with our neighbors who believe and practice differently, so that we can attain a higher level of civility within our society, so that we don't have the acts and the attitudes that keep people separated, which is of great concern to a lot of people.
One thing I could add is atheists are one of the only group that are often afraid to even use the term. So that in Minneapolis and St. Paul we can use the word atheist freely, but the atheist groups outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul, like in Rochester, they go by Rochester area freethinkers. And in Duluth, it's the Lake Superior freethinkers. In Fargo, Moorhead, it's the Red River freethinkers. The one change is that the Minnesota State University in Mankato, the students there are courageous enough to call themselves campus atheists and agnostics. So the young people aren't as afraid of the word atheist.
So the words we use do make a difference.
Yeah.
The way we understand each other, and what we're getting down to the end here, I'm sure there's much, much more that we would be able to say about this. I think we've been able to focus more on a positive approach, that is, creating better understanding through education, through relating to people, and through just being better neighbors to each other. But also, we are aware that some very tragic things happen too. And we want to try to create an atmosphere where we can deal with those and head them off. Thank you for joining us. To get more information, log on to ksmq.org and click on Diversity Connections. While you are there, you can see highlights from favorite episodes, read the blogs, and submit your own experiences and ideas. Thanks for watching. Join us next time as we discuss diversity in our communities, where we all can make a difference.